It's Friday, May 3rd, 2024. Start off with our usual promotional segment, which has luckily become far shorter now, because all I have to say is go to, if you'd like to support our show, you can do that by going to supportourshow.com. Everything you need is right there. So much shorter, so much easier. Only thing I don't have on there, because I don't know, at some point it will probably expire, is, as I say often and occasionally forget, as far as I know, the code Ozone, O-Z-O-N-E, still gets you 2 months free on Libsyn if you want to do your own podcast. No one has told me it doesn't work anymore, and while I have not tried it myself, I have no reason to think it would not work. So that's the only thing that's not on that page. Everything else is there. I will note, as one small personal aside, I did finally get my glaive shirt design up on Threadless, which I quite enjoy because it has a very beautiful quote from the movie that I think most people don't even think about, but I think it's a great quote. So I have that around the glaive on the front, and I made a nice little spinning animation for the back, which of course is static. But so that's there, and I think that's it. So
Yay.
Ends the promotional segment, And now we move on to the normal part of our show, which is
Let's Think Out Loud.
What is the point of 1984, the book?
What is the point?
Yeah, what do you think the point of it is? Because it's not just a clever story. What is the point of it?
Well, I would say there's a couple of points, but the main one I always took out of it was, well, it's interesting to say what the point of the book is, because the strongest message to me was, well, there was a combination of the danger of a surveillance state, but
it's a message book, right?
Well, it's a multiple
message book. Yeah,
I would agree with that. Sure.
So it's the idea that these things are dangerous and that this is the worst case scenario, right?
Yeah, it's basically a warning of a possible future and a extrapolation of a couple of things that it sounds like Orwell was worried about.
I listened to the anniversary edition.
Oh yes,
audio.
Yes, that's right. You were planning to do this. Go ahead. Yeah.
The audio play book, whatever. I don't know. It's not. It's like a book play.
It's just
weird.
call it. They have called it a full cast audio book.
Okay, that's. I guess that's a good description. Yeah. It's abridged.
Yeah, unlike,
so
because people have called them audio dramas.
Yeah.
But that's much more like what the BBC does, where there's music, and that's more than just a reading of a book with different people. To me, that's
and honestly, I'll give you the only bad. I'll just get the bad out of the way really quick. The only bad aspect of this was the guy. I think it's the guitarist from Muse does the sound for this, and the music is actually really beautiful.
Yeah.
But they obviously want to use it to heighten drama. So there are sequences where
okay, in that case, it is then a audio drama.
Because where the music
then that's different.
The music comes in and it's like dun 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 dun, and I'm like, listen, he's being tortured. I know it's bad.
Oh no.
But otherwise, the music is actually really the music itself is very lovely. Yeah, I like it.
Sort of ruins it for me then.
Well, you know what? It does and it doesn't. There are only really two scenes where it comes in such a way where I was like, that's a bit much. The rest of the time, I'm like, it's okay. That's the only thing that was weird.
I'll be honest, that kills any interest I have in that.
Oh no! See, it's sad too.
No, you know what? I'm telling you, I don't like when. I'll say this: if they're gonna do that, I would prefer to have a version with no soundtrack, and I get to pick the option, and I would listen to it first without it. Yeah. And then I would listen to it with it.
Yeah. So here's the thing: when I love the Neuromancer audiobook that William Gibson did, and he got Bono and The Edge to do like music for it, right?
Yeah.
And the music in that audiobook, it comes in very after the fact. It's never overwhelming to the literature. Do you know what I mean? Whereas with this, I feel like they
I don't like it at all.
Really? I love it.
I really have. I'm struggling now to think of.
Yeah. If there's ever been a one.
No, I like it when they do sound effects. Sound effects make a lot of sense to me.
But no soundtrack.
I don't like soundtracks.
Okay.
I think that it artificially
for books, let's be clear.
makes you for books. Yeah, for books. I love soundtracks and movies. Soundtracks and movies are different. So now the only thing is, if the author did the music, for example, if John Carpenter did a book and did the music, I would completely be fine with it because it's that person's. There's very specific examples.
It's an element of the art.
Well, and also because I trust John Carpenter to know what he's doing.
I don't know if John Carpenter trusts what he's doing.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, if he wrote a book and said, I'm going to score it, I'd be like, okay, I've relied on you for everything else. But as far as a book, I can't think of one example.
If that's the way you work, then no, you will probably not enjoy this because the music is prominent, right?
Ugh. Yeah, okay.
It is very good though. At times, it honestly, it gets very synth.
To be specific, I am sure the music is good. I have no problem with the fact of a soundtrack existing.
Yeah.
I just don't want it to be fused into the book.
It's pretty fused.
It's kind of like the musicians. One of the musicians that did the score for our end titles, Oversounds, Robin Ogden. He did a rescore of Night of the Living Dead with another musician named Dallas Campbell. And they did a version of the movie which has that score.
I love Dallas Campbell, by the way.
Dallas Campbell's great. And the score is fantastic, but I can, I like the fact that they released it. No. It's a movie, so it's different.
Okay.
And I watched it and I went, okay, this is really good, but I like the original where the music wasn't this, where it was simpler. I appreciate that it's there, but I like the fact that I have my option of which thing to use.
Yeah.
Well, they also did 2001, so it's the same thing.
So the music, I just want to get that out of the way. The music is the thing. Beyond that, it is utterly, incredibly, skillfully crushing. Andrew Garfield as is it Winston Smith? That's his name, right? Winston Smith?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Andrew Garfield is phenomenal. He carries the book. He is, nobody, I'm going to say up front, nobody phoned this in. Everybody who's doing this book is fantastic. But Andrew Garfield carries the book, and it's amazing his range where he goes from being defiant to being, so petrified to being destroyed. He is so good. I gotta say, I think it's probably one of the best performances of his I've ever experienced. Right? Listening to this made me want to see Andrew Garfield do this as a movie because his performance was so good. Now, the woman, I don't remember her name, the actress who does his love interest, she's very good as well. The way she does this thing where she shifts her voice, where she goes from basically faking the party line to suddenly being honest with Smith. She's very good. The two of them, who are the two people you spend the most time with in the book, they are fantastic. For me, it was a movie in my head the whole time, right? And that's also the audio work. The audio work is fantastic. They created all these sort of audio environments. The way I listened to it is I basically had a long car ride today because I was traveling, and I just put it on at the beginning of my travel and boosted the volume up, and that was my whole world for the next 3.5 hours, right? Sound effects are great. Everything is very well done. They gave you just enough atmospheric sound and people. That's the other thing I like too, is they give you the voices that you would normally hear, like, oh, people were saying this, that, and the other thing in the background. Like, that's the way you'd write it almost. They put those voices in, so when there's a crowd, like, you can kind of hear people muttering in the background. You know how, like, you played that sound effect of, like, you being in, like, a coffee shop or something like that. There you go, yeah. Except with this, they had all, like, the mutterings and all the people talking and kind of giving you facts, like
that.
Now I can't hear anything. Yeah, that last one was so loud I couldn't hear anything.
Oh,
but
good,
yes,
good.
but it's subtle. It's subtle so that you hear these things, you pick them up, but they aren't overwhelming.
Sure.
So he's
I know why that was loud. Sorry, I didn't realize I'd have the reduced volume on.
Oh, there you go.
More like this.
Yeah, that's not so bad.
Yeah, not so bad.
Yeah. So that they use these environments, and they do a really good job of injecting them throughout. There's various actors throughout. They're all very, very good. No one's bad. And then Tom Hardy as Big Brother is doing. It's like he married the Bane voice with John Hurt. That's what it sounds like.
Okay.
And it's very good. It's very ominous, and it works perfectly for that character. Honestly, the person who, after Andrew Garfield, the person who really does the most amazing job is Andrew Scott. So he was Moriarty in Sherlock, and like he was in Fleabag, and he's like having kind of he's doing the Talented Mr. Ripley series right now. Do you know what I'm talking about? Andrew
I know who
Scott?
you're talking about. I can't think of the name.
He has
what is that
such,
guy's name?
and that's his name. That's the actor's name.
That's his name?
Yeah, Andrew Scott. Pretty sure. I'm gonna look it up just to make sure I'm not.
You know what? Since I can't think of it, you're probably right. It's why? Because that's almost
Yes.
that feels like a placeholder name.
I know. Yes, his name is Andrew Scott. Yeah. So he plays the interrogator in the book, and he is so frightening. He is so conniving and just there's certain actors that when you hear their voice, it almost like comes out at you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
So putting him and Andrew Garfield together is incredible, and they are sort of the whole tail end of the book is the two of them. It is even though it's abridged, and I can clearly kind of feel where they rush things through. It was an incredible performance, fantastically done. This is not normally what I want from an audiobook, right? But as a performance piece, it was really something fantastic to experience. That said, 1984 is fucking depressing. And it raises a lot of questions. I mean, for one, there's a thing in that book where there's the debate of whether you want to have a good life, secretly have a good life, and get it and break the follow the little rules so you can break the big rules, right? And just kind of live your own quiet life and let the world tear itself apart, right? And then there's the other side of it, which is but you can't just let this happen. You have to try and change things. You have to know that at least in your death, you are trying to make things better, right? And that's kind of the big question in the book for me in 1984, where Smith decides that it's not enough for him to just have the girl and live a quiet life, that this is wrong, and that he wants to do something to fight back. But then the depressing part about it is that in the end, the system crushes him. This is not even the Brazil ending. That's the worst part about it, because there's a lot of connections between 1984 and Brazil, right? And I would argue that Brazil is more hopeful than 1984, because in 1984, every last thing is taken away from Smith. The last thing he has is that he loves Julia. That was her name, Julia. He loves Julia, and they can't take that away from him. He loves her no matter what. And they finally find a way at the end of this book to crush him and take that love away from him. That he would basically give her up to escape what they're doing to him, right? So they fully crush him. And the end of the audio play is basically him seeing Julia in a cafe, and them talking about how they were both crushed, and that once they give up, once they actually are destroyed, they no longer know how to have those feelings when you fully basically put somebody else in front of the bullet instead of yourself, rather than die for them. You can't love them like that anymore. And so there's this implication at the end of 1984 that Julia and him will see each other again, but it's really pointless, whereas in Brazil, even though they lobotomize, is it Buttle? What's his name in that movie? Is it Buttle?
No, Buttle.
Lowry.
I was going to say
Lowry.
Buttle is the other
Lowry.
guy.
Lowry.
Lowry.
So even though they lobotomize Lowry at the end of that movie, in his head, he is still with the girl. So
yes,
Brazil is infinitely more positive.
He is in an infinite state of bliss within his own mind, and that they actually cannot take away from him.
Yeah, they never broke Lowry. They never broke his mind. He was always in love with the girl. They never took the love away. And in the end, he is in that shiny place in his mind with her, right? Whereas Smith doesn't get that. They actually destroy Smith. And that's why 1984 it's an interesting book, because it's on one hand you look at it and you're like, is this depression porn? Is this it's a message book, is it entertainment? Is it what is it? And I think it is a message book. I think it is Orwell saying this is how bad it can get, and when it gets this bad, your hero might not be able to survive this. Don't let it get this bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the implication I had having just listened to it. And it's heavy. I mean, it is really heavy. I was getting to the end of the book, the audio thing, and I was just like, holy shit. Because, Andrew Garfield he really fucking leans into it. When they're torturing his ass, is the message, don't let this happen? Is the message, don't let them use these tools against you? Because on some degree, the idea of Big Brother, is with us. There's sometimes when you have these older books, they sit there and go, well, they didn't really know how things were going to go. But 1984 is oddly one of the most scarily prescient books, right? Because we do rewrite history. We do track people. We do track what you do. The other night, I told you I showed my kids Stargate the other night, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't tell you the part that we had been talking about it all day. And when I went to Amazon and I went to the search feature, you know how there's the movies that pop up before you actually put any search parameters in? What was the first movie on that list? Can you guess?
No. If you just did a blank search?
Yeah, no, I didn't do a search. I didn't do a search at all. I opened the search engine in Amazon. I never even
Stargate?
No. Before we talked about watching Stargate all day. We opened the Amazon app.
Oh, you're saying the whole thing where it's supposed to be listening to you.
Yeah, and the first movie that popped up before we even typed anything in was Stargate. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And it's like, yeah, we are, I think, to some degree living in a Big Brother light version of things. It's not as bad as this book in any way, shape, or form. But you know what? It could be. And it's strange that a book written, when was 1984 written? Jesus, that was like 1960.
Oh man, yeah.
Hold on, I'm looking for the copyright date. 1948. Yeah, you go.
Oh, okay.
1948 because he flipped the numbers.
Sure.
Oh no, you're right. Because it's 1948 and 1949 are listed. Weird.
Okay, so who knows? So in the late 40s, that's fine.
Interesting. Yeah. So anyway, a book written in the late 40s is still so heavily important. Its message is still so strong. It's still as scary today as it was then. And even the technology of the book, he kept it so vague that you read it and you can see things. The only thing 1984 doesn't have is iPhones. But it wouldn't be that hard to sneak them in there.
Well, but,
yeah, so,
but I mean, they did. They had the iPhone of its time, which was doesn't the TV always watching you?
the TV's always watching you.
Yeah, I mean that is the cell phone. Same difference. Is the thing the screen that you're glued to.
Yeah.
Well, okay, you miniaturize it, but so
every bedroom has a TV. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
The
you're
talkie
carrying,
box, or whatever they call it.
You're carrying your TV with you now. That's all.
Yeah. So if you like 1984 at all, or if you just want to experience a really incredible sound performance, 1984, the anniversary edition by Audible is fantastic. But it just got me in the mode of thinking about 1984 and just how it's still such an amazing and prescient message, and it got me thinking, was there any way out for the sad thing is there's no way out for Smith. If he kept on going the way he went, they would have caught him at some point or another. He couldn't just stay with Julia and live a life because they were already watching Smith. So they would have caught him. So for me, it makes sense that he wanted to rebel against them. I mean, they caught him right away, but it makes sense that he wanted to rebel against them because they were already watching him. He was right. The downside is that they then crushed him. But then there's this question at the end of, well, he's been crushed. He's a true believer now because they've crushed it out of him. And you're like, is Smith better off at the end? Because at least now he can, if you live in an insane land and you're the only sane person, right? Is there some kind of peace in becoming insane like everybody else? It's not a positive message. Let's just be clear.
Right.
I'm just examining it from a different direction.
It's interesting. It's interesting to consider the book in a modern context. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Because I don't really know how to answer that, to be honest.
It gets into some really thorny territory because also, I mean, Smith, the pre-tortured version of Smith doesn't consider post-tortured version to be human because the capacity for love is what he thinks makes him feel alive and human.
Right.
So at the end of the book, he no longer has the capacity for love for anything other than Big Brother. Right? So he is not truly a human by his own terrorized standards, but he is less driven. It's nuanced because he's still fucking nuts at the end. I mean, at the end, the last line of it is basically when they're talking about how they've won the war, and he keeps chanting, I think he says "Hail Big Brother" or something like that, where he keeps saying.
I thought the last line was something like "He loved Big Brother, he truly did," or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's but there's this kind of induced mania about it,
So because it has been a while since I've read it, but I remember most of it. So the thing for him was the cage on his head with a rat, right?
Yes, that was the thing that broke him. Yeah, okay. So they had him.
How did
him
they know
tortured.
He was afraid of rats? Did they ever specify, or is it just that whatever your fear is?
No, he tells the story. So basically, what happened was that they were always monitoring him, and he had this one room that he rented where he thought that there was no TV, and he thought he was safe. And then he tells Julia the story about how the rats ate his sister.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
I could never remember that part of it. That's right.
So when they put the rats on his head, that's the thing that breaks him.
Yeah.
And they were saying how everybody has a fear. We can always figure out the fear because they're watching everybody.
That's what it is. In the end, they can always win because of that.
Yeah, because they, because of the psychology, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it is as pertinent today as when I read it.
It's always one of the things I liked about Ronin, where the guy's like, "Oh, we were told to hold out indefinitely," and De Niro's like, "Oh, nobody holds out indefinitely." It's like you could do things to hold out, but eventually everybody breaks. And then he does it with the grasshopper joke. But I always like the fact that he very clearly says, you're full of shit. No one holds out forever. They will get you. It's just a matter of how. So no matter how good you are, they're going to get it out of you. And that's the thing is, people are like, oh, if you have nothing to lose, everybody has a fear. Everyone fears something. There is nobody without fear. Unless you're literally, I don't know.
I'm gonna say there's
damaged enough to not.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that there might be somebody out there who doesn't have that.
Okay, but that would be an average individual.
Yeah, exactly. That's an extreme.
Obviously, ruling out extreme cases.
Most people.
99% of people are afraid of something.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And unless you're hyposensitive, where you don't feel pain, they could always resort to pain.
Yeah.
I mean, in the end, they could just start hacking fingers off until you start screaming and pulling out.
Oh, yeah. When you're just a torso, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. They can do whatever they want to. They can break you any way they feel like it,
Yeah, that's what I mean about nobody lasts forever.
Which is the cruelty of the system.
Sure.
And Andrew Scott is just so diabolical. Like, the way he starts talking, like, there's just something so... oh my God, it's just the way there's just this sociopath tone to the way he handles the character, the torturer, O'Brien. That's his name, O'Brien, and it's haunting. It's chilling when you're hearing it, and it's haunting afterwards.
It's a David Warner-esque ability to just sound sinister. I always think of David Warner in that Next Generation episode where he's playing the Cardassian who's tormenting Picard, and how he's just talking very casually about
and David Warner is one of those he's one of those actors where he's it was always weird if you saw him in like a not psychopath role where he's not
him playing the kindly old man puts you on edge immediately.
Yeah, you're like, what's the catch here,
hello, I love children. Oh God, he's gonna kill them all. He's gonna kill them.
It's like playing Gene Simmons as the good guy in something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like, that's the bad guy from Runaway. Come on. Yeah. So I cannot go on enough about the performances. Like Andrew Garfield and Scott are just astounding, and Julia is very good too. But it's just the power of 1984. I mean, it's still with us. And I was saying, it's as powerful today as when I read it in my youth. It's just, but it's depressing. And what's fascinating is that you read 1984 and you see the DNA of like so many paranoid authors. Like Philip K. Dick is in there. A lot of authors are there. You see the DNA for them. But the message is very straightforward, which is that, when you have this if you let this kind of world happen, it's so hard to reverse course on it, because once history becomes malleable, well, then does it really matter at all? I mean, that's the thing is once there's that great line they say where it's like, there is no past, or if you control the present, you control the past, and if you control the past, you control the future, or something like that. And they're right. Like, that's the thing. George Orwell was a very smart man, and none of this is necessarily illogical. It may have seemed fanciful at the time, but today it's even more scary, because everything is listening. Phone is listening. I mean, we don't have a big. Honestly, the joke of it is that the only thing that's saved us from from 1984 Big Brother is capitalism, because everyone's listening to you, but they don't want to control you, in as much as they just want to control you so they can get your money. So they're listening so that they can better design their system to get every last fucking cent out of you. But they don't they don't want to kill you. They just want you to be their undying slave customer.
I was going to say, if they kill everybody, they have to do the work. So
yeah, exactly.
That's no good.
But what I'm saying is, like, it's not. We often we go on about these technologies, but we never very often bitch about the government. It's not the governments we're worried that are listening to us. It's fucking Amazon, and Google and Facebook. Like, that's what's kind of amusing, and it's this different direction that I don't think Orwell would have expected. This idea that. No, it's the capitalist entertainment companies that are listening in, not the governments anymore, that you have to worry about so much. So yeah, it's still an incredible jumping off point to think about the present day. And I don't know when 1984 will be obsolete, because the message is still so pertinent. The control, the eavesdropping, the being watched. There is surveillance. We live in an age of surveillance. There's CC cameras everywhere. There's, machines recording everywhere. My iPhone over there is, giving me the side eye, and always will be. I love in the book when they meet in the woods, and it's like, it's the one place where they can be together. In the beginning, it's the one place and honestly, she's right, because once he rents a room, you find out later that room has been monitored from the start. But the only place they ever had a chance to be together unobserved was in the woods, in like some remote part of the park where nobody was, where they had like an hour to themselves. And and how do you escape that world? I mean, arguably the proletariat, the proles or whatever they call them, they're the poor who Big Brother barely gives a shit about, because they can't really do anything, but it would be interesting. I think the limitations of 1984 are cyberpunk. Do you understand that statement?
The limitations of 1984 are cyberpunk.
Because when cyberpunk, you want me to explain it?
You mean just technology?
Well, when cyberpunk happened, when the genre of cyberpunk happened, right?
Yeah.
The genre of cyberpunk is, yes, there's technology. Guess what? We can hack it. We can hack it. We can fuck with it. We can play with it. We can be just as mean to them as they are to us. And I think that's the thing that George Orwell didn't necessarily consider, because it wasn't something that was even in his mind.
Oh, I don't think that cyberpunk message means anything. I don't think hacking them back means shit. It's completely irrelevant.
It makes it so that you
time
can.
has shown us that all we do is hack each other. We're not touching any of the people that are in charge of the stuff. They ultimately control it.
Yes, but what I mean is you can hack these systems. You can play with them. You can make yourself unseen. You can hide.
No.
You don't believe that?
No.
I do.
Not if you are in any way using these things, they have some measure of control. There is no way to hide from it. Absolutely not.
Interesting.
Because foundationally, all of this stuff travels on. This is the thing that people keep forgetting about. I saw something on this earlier where there was a funny image of something where it was a little Ethernet cord plugged into a wall, and it said, "Don't unplug this. Your wireless is still wired." Meaning that this is how the wireless in this area was fed, because it has to. There is no wireless. Wireless is an extension of wired. And fundamentally, the wires are controlled by big companies and the government. So
there's you have the signal booster that goes out into the air in the room, but it's still wired into the wall.
You can encrypt everything, but they are still aware of your presence, and that very encryption makes them more intent on seeing you. So there is no hacking your way out of it.
I just wrote about this in my book.
Short of living out in the woods in a shack you built yourself that nobody knows about. Well, then you're fine.
I was just writing about this idea that you can remove that. There's a character who's hacking themselves out of the data, but they're leaving an abscess in the data. So that's
the thing. Is
that you can still see that there was something there.
Yeah, a hole.
Now you're seeing the absence.
The hole in the force still tells you that there's somebody blocking the force from the Thrawn books, right? That's how they knew, because there were holes in the force. So
I love it all comes back to Star Wars.
Well, I always think about, remember Thrawn had those lizards that could block the force, and so ultimately they figured out, wait a minute, we're seeing holes. Well, that's how all these systems, they constantly monitor for any type of outliers, positive or negative. That's the thing that people seem to forget.
God, yeah.
Creating a black hole doesn't mean you're gone.
Yeah, I just wrote a whole sequence about this. These guys have these things, these shades that mess with the facial recognition software, and they're talking to a machine that's basically telling them, guys, every time you use those shades, your shades fuck with the system in a predictable way. Anybody who understands that disturbance can start tracking you, because you consistently make the same kind of hole in the system.
Right.
Yeah. So yes, you are correct in that respect. I just mean that
was what you were talking about was true for a very limited amount of time. There was this very small window where.
So you think we're just completely beyond it at this point?
Oh, absolutely. Because there was a point where the computer systems were only understood by a small group of very smart people who got it. Well, we're well past that now. These systems are now established and entrenched. Yeah. So the fact is that, I mean, short of creating your own mesh network with other people in an area that nobody truly knows about, but again, you need power for that, which means there's a bill, which means there's a name or something that someone will notice. And as time goes on, and they have
so what you're saying is there's no way to fuck with the system and not be tracked somehow.
There's no way to make yourself invisible. That invisibility is a myth.
You know what? I'd be curious if anybody who listens to this has a different opinion on that, because I don't 100% believe it.
I know for a fact that one person who listens to this, and I won't be any more specific, is in cybersecurity. So I will be curious what this person says. This person will tell me.
You know what? Actually, I just realized something. My wife works with people who do cybersecurity. I should ask them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to know, like, is there a possibility that you could actually be invisible? Like, create fronts and just live an invisible life in the modern day and age?
Using modern technology, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Using unplug, sure.
But you'd have to use it. Yeah. Like, is there a specific way that, to shield it or yourself and not leave a massive trail?
It's just like the idea of securing your house. There is no way to secure your house. All what you're trying to do is make it where somebody else is the better target.
You're trying to make it as difficult as possible.
Yeah, you impose difficulty so they take the easier thing. But if somebody's targeting you, they're getting in, and that's the same as everything.
Yeah, and then you kill them.
That's true, and that's what I mean about it. There was probably about a 10-year period where the cyberpunk ideal of
and this is the 80s.
Reversing the flow. Yeah.
No, this is the 80s. Yeah, cyberpunk was. But what I'm saying is that it was a new idea. This idea that we don't need to be overwhelmed by Big Brother. Ultimately, Orwell's
thing goes right past cyberpunk, because 1984. It's not as if one day there weren't the TVs watching you, the next day there were. There was a period of them building up this thing, and that's what the surveillance state is now. It's been a period of governments and private companies understanding how all of the interconnected systems and. Yeah. This is the other thing, is a lot of them wisely saw and are correct that it has now become the same way that people say the internet is now a utility, everybody needs to have it. That has a dark side to it, which means now everything relies on it. How can you bank without the internet? How can you do
My mother always bitches that there's all this stuff she has to do with the city, and they're like, "We want your email." And she's
of course.
I don't have an email.
Or your phone number or something.
Yeah. How can you not have an email?
And eventually, cars will all be online, and they'll be monitored constantly, and it will not be an option. You will not be able to not have it. It just will be.
Oh,
they'll put it under the guise of,
I know, security. And you said if you buy a classic car, they'll just tell you have to get this unit for it.
You won't be able to get insurance. Well, what they'll do is they'll say, well, we're not forcing you to. You just can't have insurance unless this thing is in it. And you have to have insurance by law. Therefore, you're breaking the law. So you can't have the car.
Yeah, and that's the roundabout way of forcing you. Yeah.
No, this is how these things work.
It's 7 o'clock. Do you know where your freedom is?
That's what it is.
God. Yeah. You hover on that soundboard between a really useful sort of sound clip system, and then sometimes you're just like a 2-year-old with the glockenspiel.
But it applies. It was relevant to the conversation we were having. That thing with the crowd noise was relevant.
Oh no, listen, it's always it's never off kilt. It's never off the point. It's just very funny.
The nice part about it is we have had a very steady cadence to our shows for a very long time. It's just a little bit of a thing to kind of, introduce little perks and hiccups into it. So people are like, oh, that's cute. They're doing little things to try to keep it interesting in case we're just getting dreadfully boring.
Is this like trying to make the bedroom interesting? We're like, honey, I'm going to dress up as a police officer and you dress up like a chicken.
Well, I was thinking more like Robin Hood and Maid Marian, but sure, yeah, why not?
All right, you dress up like Maid Marian, she dresses up like Robin Hood.
Yeah, whatever. I don't.
And
I
then
don't,
and then cue the waterworks.
why would you assume it would be otherwise? I have no problem playing Maid Marian. I don't like tight underwear, so if you give me a skirt that I can go commando in, I'll be fine. There's an image for everybody. Enjoy that.
Is that a trans Maid Marian?
No,
swinging in the wind.
No, that's not trans. I'm still a guy. I'm just
transvestite.
Why
Yes,
can a man not be
transvestite.
Maid Marian?
Yeah,
I'm Mr. Marian, like Mr. Mom.
Mr. Marian.
Show title, Mr. Marian.
Well,
Marian.
I will say that I do think that
Is Maid Marian with an E or an O?
Marian, isn't it?
Yeah.
M-A-R-I-E-N?
I'm going to look it up. Maid Marian was M-A-R-I-A-N. Okay. Mar-I-E-N. Okay, got it. I thought it might be M-A-R-I-O-N. Marian.
Experiencing 1984 again reminds me to try to enjoy the fuck out of life as much as you can. Because that is the only victory you can really have. Enjoy it as much as you can. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to be a certain way. If you can go without the surveillance technology, you know what? It might be nice to go without it.
How can you anymore?
Well, you can listen. You cannot get all the plastic out of your life, but you can limit it a little bit.
Oh, sure.
And you can limit the surveillance technology a little bit. Listen, I don't have Alexa and all these fucking things in my house. That doesn't mean that I don't have surveillance technology in my house. It just means that I don't have those. You know what I mean? Like, it's all about, it's a diet. It's trying to limit your intake of this stuff. There's people who have, Alexas in every room of their house and the bathroom.
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah.
And I don't want it in the cars. I really don't. That is the one place where it is.
We have time on that. Look, it's not going to, I don't think you and I will be alive when it is enforced.
The over technological ness of cars today is beginning to fucking really irritate me.
Please, this is one of my, this. I've got on about the waste level technology, and I still maintain that.
Just the braking system, the smart braking system.
That's yes. I said belt up, put tech in, belt down, keep it out. Simple as that.
My smart brake system has nearly killed me a few times. I love it when this is a classic example of how this is probably how I die. When you're trying to you're coming out of a parking lot and you're going perpendicular into like a two-way road, right? And you have to cut in really quick because there's traffic moving quickly, right? So you have to time it to get in between two cars, but you have to start driving when there's already a car halfway through the space, right? It's the whole you gotta jump while there's actually room, but you do that by jumping early, right? So you hit the gas and your car immediately goes, there's a car there, and kills your gas. But you're already going, and you just roll lazily into traffic. And you nearly get T-boned.
There you go.
One of these days, I will get T-boned. It'll be the fucking car's fault.
Probably.
And I hate that because they just keep jamming all these systems in there. And it's like, hey, you know what? Listen, either let me drive the car or don't drive the car. Just drive it or don't drive it. I'm done. But beyond all that, it is a beautiful audiobook. So if you like 1984 at all, or if you just want to hear a really good audio performance, it was really fantastic. The music can at times be unnecessarily involved. That said, it is beautiful music. So I got over that because it was so good. And I'm almost curious now to see what are other really good examples of this kind of media. They tried to do a Neuromancer one. The BBC did at some point, and I hated it. I think you liked it more than I did. Where they had a full cast thing.
I think I did like that one. Yeah, if I remember that one correctly, I did like it. Yeah.
So
but you like William Gibson's kind of monotone narration.
I do like his drawl. Yeah.
And I don't mind it, but I thought the cast did a very good job of, and that had the sound effect thing. I don't remember that having music.
Yeah.
It may have had incidental, but.
So I do like the sound of Scarlett Johansson's voice. There's something kind of smoky about it for me. And I saw that she does a reading of Alice in Wonderland. And I was
Oh, boy.
really tempted to get that, but it's an Audible only. You can't get it like in the iTunes store.
Okay. Well, of course you can. You can get it elsewhere.
Well, I'm sure you can, but I wasn't able to get it before my trip. But like I like that idea of getting like some actor or actress whose voice you really like and having them read something to you and just have that kind of like ASMR effect, while you're enjoying a book. Because the woman who reads Pattern Rec for Tantor Media, I really love the way she reads that book. And I liked it so much that in Tantor Media, they'll let you actually look for books by the narrator. And I went and she did The Art of War. So I listened to her do The Art of War, and I'm like, yeah, it's like she's just got a really good voice for me for that kind of thing. But yeah,
she got the narrator from Baldur's Gate 3 to do Lord of the Rings. Maybe
that woman is an amazing narrator. Holy shit.
That might actually get me to read that book.
She turns any narration into some kind of like boner narration. It's strange. God. Everything is so like what do they call it? What is that phone sex voice?
Does layer over a sensual texture to everything.
Yeah, it is sensual. Yeah, it's so overly sensual. Like even when it's bad, like in the game when you do something wrong and she's narrating how they're deciding whether or not to kill you. But even the way she says it, where it's like it's just so sexy, where you're like, are they going to kill me, or are they threatening me with an orgy?
Once again, you've stepped on your balls and impaled yourself on your own dick. Wow. Yeah, I guess I have.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the reaction you have. You're like, well, yes, I think I better had. Yeah. So she's
sounds so bad when you tell it to me. Yeah.
She's fantastic. You know what? I wonder if she has. What is her name? Do you remember what her name was?
I have no idea.
Hold on.
I can't remember names very
narrator. Her name is Amelia Tyler. Okay, so has Amelia Tyler ever done an audiobook?
I would.
With a voice like that, she should have.
You'd think. Maybe she has. I'm going to say yes.
Ooh, she has.
See? There you go.
No, this can't be the same woman.
It could. Hey, look, if she's good at narration, come on.
Interesting.
What has she done?
I don't think this is a book. This is like an audio play. Vina's Planet, Season 1, Broken Promises.
That sounds like a narrative podcast or something.
Yeah, it is. There's a full cast, and she's part of it. Yeah.
Well, that's good. I like those. Yeah, that's good.
I would like a book. I could just so go for a book because she does have a wonderful voice for it. Yeah. So, anyhow, that's what I did to my mind today. What did you do to yours?
Well, nothing on that level. But I did watch a movie, and
is it a happy movie?
No, but it's an happy movie. No.
Is it happier? Is it happier?
No.
Oh, this is gonna be one of those podcasts.
No, it's not miserable. I don't think it's miserable. It's a strange movie to describe in some ways because it sounds like a downer film, and I guess on paper it is, but at the same time the way the movie plays, it's not really sad. It's just kind of all right. Well, let's just get into it because I can talk about it and describe it better. But I wouldn't call it a sad movie. I would call it a movie about forces of nature. I guess that's the way to say it. And sometimes forces of nature are not avoidable, and there is a natural order to things, and you don't want to disrupt it. So the movie is from, I believe it's 77? Oh, no, I'm sorry, 70. Oh, wow. Is this the right one? No, this is the other. Okay, hold on. There's two movies with the same title. Let's see, is it 84? Yes, it's 84, sorry. Or 83, right. I guess. It's called Soul Survivor from 1983 or 4.
Wait, soul as in the only
soul
person?
Of your shoe. Soul of your shoe.
Okay.
Yeah, so number 1. Yes, only one left. Soul Survivor is what it's called. Now, this is a movie that many people say, oh, this is before there was Final Destination films. This is the first Final Destination. And sort of, yeah, it is. And essentially, the short synopsis is a lone survivor of a plane crash is haunted by a feeling unworthy of survival, which is not accurate. Dead people start coming after her to collect her. sort of accurate. So that synopsis is half correct. It is about a woman who survives a plane crash. She's the only one who survives. In fact, specifically a clip she's going to say that she does not feel worthy of living. She doesn't have that survivor syndrome thing.
Yeah.
So you're going to hear her say that. But she does feel that it's odd that she's alive. And the thing about dead people start coming after her to collect her, yeah, I guess that's accurate, but I think that's a bad description of it. So whatever, let's just go through the movie as we typically do. So the movie starts out, and the movie starts with a woman on a bus with a gun, and she's got blood on her shirt. And we see that for a second, and then we see another woman wake up, and this woman has clearly dreamt of that bus scene that we just saw. And then she sees visions of a plane crashing and a woman surviving and everybody else being dead. And so then this woman immediately calls. We find out she's an actress. She calls her agent. And the agent basically is like, oh, don't start with your psychic visions again. It's, I'm struggling to get you one friggin' job. And you keep telling everybody that you're psychic and you're having dreams. And you know what? If you don't shut up about this, I'm going to drop you and you're not going to be able to work. And so she just kind of shuts up about it. Next thing we see is a plane that's coming into land. And sure enough, the plane crashes, and there's one woman who's left alive, and we see her being taken to the hospital. She's relatively unharmed. She's got a bruised shoulder or something, but she certainly did not.
Does she discover she has superpowers?
Nope, no superpowers. Nope, nothing. She's just the only person who survived the wreck, and so she's in the hospital for a little while. They're evaluating her, making sure she's okay, and the doctor that is overseeing her happens to be a handsome fella. And she's about the same age, and you can kind of see where this is going to go. But this is the audio where he's getting ready to release her. And specifically that little thing that says she feels unworthy. No, you're going to hear she has no fear. He basically asks her how she's feeling emotionally because, of course, there is that thing that's called survivor syndrome, which he'll bring up. And this is her talking about how she feels.
How do you feel, Denise?
Great. I'm the miracle girl. Didn't you see me in the news?
Denise.
Dee Dee, okay?
Dee Dee. How do you feel?
Odd.
Depressed? I have reasons for asking.
I feel odd. I don't know. Depressed? Oh, but I've had bouts with depression before. I don't know.
Denise. Dee Dee. There's a psychological condition called survivor syndrome. Now, a person in your position can often feel guilty about having survived a catastrophe that killed everybody else. A person in your position may even feel unworthy of survival.
Nice try, but that's not it. I feel neither guilty nor unworthy.
Well, then, you tell me.
It's like once I bought this dress at Magnan's. Expensive, so I charged it. And it never showed up on my bill. So I thought, great, a mistake in my favor. I'll just keep my mouth shut. It's kind of the same thing I felt when I came to after the crash. But that's only good as far as it goes. Like, I'm a cause and effect person. Now, I knew why I never got the bill from Magnan. It was because the computer screwed up. But as far as me being alive... Okay, just point me in the right direction.
Go down here, take the elevator down, follow the hallway out, and it'll let you
That
off
was-
the loading dock.
That's
was a
because
hell
I
of a-
edited a bunch of stuff out.
Okay. That was a hell of a cut, you know.
Dee Dee,
Yeah.
do me a favor. Will you keep it in mind that what happened was just luck, pure and simple? I mean, don't make anything more out of it. It's just like that dress you never got billed for.
Oh, I got billed for it, all right. Those stupid computers. They may make a mistake, but they eventually find you.
Yeah, there was a middle bit where her friend shows up and the nurse is rude to her. But I wanted to get that bit about, it eventually did show up because it's important to what the movie is. So I just hacked them together instead of waiting for another minute of, in between stuff that really didn't have any bearing on anything.
Yeah.
So as you're in the clip, she does not feel unworthy. She just feels that something's off, which, and that immediately telegraphs what the movie is that, you can't actually escape death. they don't really ever get into why she escaped it to begin with, because it's not like she's given a clue or anything. So there's little bits of the movie where you go, all right, well, maybe we need another minute or so of something to explain a little bit of why. Because if she had done something to dodge death, to cheat death, some of this movie would make more sense. But she's just lucky. And sometimes people are just lucky. But like I said, the movie is basically telegraphing what it's going to be, which is that now death or something. It's very odd the way they even play the concept of what's coming after her. They never name it death. They refer to it as they, and it's like a force or some group of, I don't know, multiple deaths or whatever that are out there. It's sort of an interesting idea that it's not a reaper with a scythe, but this larger set of mechanisms that just have to make sure that anybody who was supposed to die dies. I kind of like that it's vague.
Well, it's the computer.
Sort of, yeah, the computer of death, I guess, Compudeath. And so right after that, because he's basically showing her, yeah.
Compudeath is so much better than Mr. Marion. Just my opinion.
On. All right, Compudeath.
Compudeath.
There you go. Compudeath. All right, I won't capitalize the D. I had the D capitalized. All right. So anyway, the reason he was saying go down here and this is because there's a bunch of reporters, because as she said, on the Miracle Girl, her news, she's all over the news. There's nothing else. She has a comment about what is there? No other news but me. And they're like, well, you're interesting because you survived this thing and it's a freak accident. So she goes down and she's going in a parking garage to meet her friend. And while she's down there, she happens to look over and she sees this little girl staring at her. And the little girl is soaking wet and dripping water. And the girl's just staring at her. And she goes over to see if she's lost or whatever, and it just so happens that a truck that was sitting nearby suddenly loses its brakes and almost kills her. And then she looks in the truck, there's nobody there. She looks over, the girl's gone, doesn't think much of it, so goes home, and she's at home, and she's sitting around, and she's, calling the doctor, and they're starting to kind of, flirt and do their little thing, so you're seeing where this is going, where it's getting set up. And then there's a lot of people have called the movie boring. It's not boring. It's just that it's not filled with gore. It's very atmospheric, and there's a lot of long, tense scenes. For example, when this first night where she's back home, she's in this big empty house, and that actress, the psychic actress, calls her and basically is like, like, oh, you shouldn't have survived the crash, and she's saying this weird shit to her, and then this woman's in her house by herself. And she's hearing all these noises, and she looks over, and she has one of those, the clocks that are the kind of classic 80s clock of the cat with the eyes moving and the tail moving back and forth.
Back and forth, yeah.
Right? I mean, it's like a creepy fucking thing in the dark. I've seen these clocks in real life. They are terrifying in the dark. So she happens to look over, and it's stopped, and it's just staring at her. And that's all it is. Nothing else is happening, but she's in the dark in her kitchen, staring at this clock that's stopped and staring at her. And it's stuff like that. And there are a couple of jump scares, but mostly it's these long, lingering shots where she just thinks something's off, and the movie just lets that cook. And I think for some people, well, that's boring. So they think it's boring. But for me, it's atmospheric. I think it's actually to the movie's credit that it doesn't have, ghostly skeletons rattling around and going, woo! It's just setting up that, is this her mind? Is this, we know as the audience that something's going on, but it's playing a lot on this idea, because she mentions in that first clip, if you picked it up, where she said, well, I've had bouts of depression. So that's another thing in the movie that's playing up, is that she has had some psychological stuff in the past.
And the thing is, we were talking recently about the Night Detectives, the True Detective series in Alaska.
Yes.
And you had read that it is something supernatural by the end, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But what's funny is that, so I'm halfway through the show, right? And I realized the other day that everything supernatural only ever happens with the one detective.
Yeah.
That Jodie Foster's character never specifically experiences anything supernatural so far herself. The other woman
my understanding is that only changes at the very last episode or something.
Okay, yeah, because I thought, wouldn't it be interesting?
I've only read about it. I haven't seen it, so these people could be misinterpreting too.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing.
No, that's completely wrong. This is the way.
I think it'll be interesting if when you get to the end, it's one of those things where, the supernatural stuff happened to people who believe in that shit, whereas Jodie Foster's character, there's always stuff that doesn't make any sense, but doesn't necessarily mean it's supernatural. You know what I mean?
Right, and that's what I mean about. I like the fact that the movie gives you some ways where it could, in fact, because they lay out the thing about her past psychological stuff and the rest of it. So even though I was pretty sure, because, you know, the little girl appearing right away kind of gives, but then again, it could have, but it could have been that it all ends up being in her mind. So it wasn't a guarantee. And actually that would have been interesting if they had flipped it around where they kept making you really think by everything else that it was. Cause it's not unheard of to do that in a horror film. It's been done. Yeah. So she meets up with the doctor. So like I said, the thing in her house, nothing happens. It's just her. And that's what I mean about their scenes in the beginning anyway, where, you know, you think, okay, you know, even though she keeps saying, oh, there's nothing wrong, I feel fine, all the rest of it. Well, maybe she doesn't. Maybe it is more than she's giving it the ability to know, right? So next day, she just so happens to be a TV producer or something, and that actress is there, and her presence is making the actress blow her lines. And, you know, so she's at one point, the actress can't do the commercial because she's, I guess, a commercial producer or whatever. And so the actress kind of walks off, and they're like, all right, that's it. You know, this actress is all done. And so she goes, and she's having this nice lunch in the park with the handsome doctor guy. And the doctor guy's like, all right, well, I've got to get back to work now because I'm a handsome doctor man and I've got to go. And so he takes off, and she's in the park, and it's a beautiful day. And then she looks over, and there's just this old man staring at her. And he's just staring at her. And again, he's not doing anything. And in fact, he's not, you know, he's not dripping flesh and, you know, like he has demon eyes or what. He's just looks like he's an old man that's standing in the park staring at her, right? Yeah. And that's all that happens. So again, is this a ghost or something, or is it just an old man in a park? You don't know. But, you know, she sees him, and then she goes away, and so then that night, she and the doctor are at her place, and they're chatting, and then he happens to bring up that he has to do a double shift at the hospital. And there's a reason why. So let's listen to that, because it may have some bearing on something that happened earlier in the film.
Well, do you want to get together for dinner or something tomorrow? Maybe you'll be able to relax with your mind off it.
Sounds great. Where?
Well, I came to your place today. Why don't you come to mine tomorrow?
The hospital? You mean you're going in now and you're going to be there until tomorrow afternoon?
Yep. Split shift. There's been a little shake-up. Some people have been suspended.
Oh, for what?
We had a body disappear from the morgue the other day.
God, I thought things like that only happened in the movies.
Yeah. Well, with somebody's idea of a joke, they took the body out for half an hour and then put it back.
Some joke.
The girl's parents found out about it and became understandably upset.
Girl?
Yeah. Little girl. She drowned in a boating accident.
Oh, scary music.
Especially now around the holidays and everything, you know. The body disappeared right after she was brought in. Somebody told the parents, and now the hospital is putting on a show about getting to the bottom of it. But the fact is, nobody knows where the body went or how it got back.
At that point, okay, now somebody outside of her has noticed. The interesting part was that the body left and came back, because
it had nothing to do. It had nothing to do afterwards.
Well, I know, but in most movies, it would have been that she saw the spirit of the girl. You know what I mean? But not that the body actually reanimated, went out, tried to kill her, and then was like, well, I missed, and then went back to sleep. So I'm like, oh, that's different. So, but again, even then I'm sitting here going, well, that's sort of weird. Is this somebody doing something? Is this somebody getting a revenge on her or whatever? Because it just seemed odd to me that the body would get up, you know, take a shot at her, and then just give up and go lay back down in the morgue.
No. I actually have an explanation for you.
Sure, go ahead.
Compudeath. If she's dealing with Compudeath has to put the pieces back where they were once it's finished using them in that particular point.
You're more right than you know, because we're going to get to a somewhat of an explanation of how this all works. So after this, you know, she's driving to work the next day after he tells her about this. She's starting to take her antidepressant pills again because this kind of freaks her out. So again, we're kind of getting thrown wait a minute, is this something coming back? You know what I mean? Is she starting to have problems again? So the next day she's driving along, and a guy just walks out in front of her, and she kind of loses control of the car and skids around him and gets out and starts yelling at him, and he's just staring at her. Now, again, he doesn't look weird. He's just standing there. It's just kind of odd that he doesn't react. And so she gets in the car and goes to work. And they've decided to give the actress one more chance because they can't find anybody else, or they, short notice, whatever. And yet again, because this woman, Denise, is there, she just like storms off the set. And so Denise says, well, let me see if I can talk her down. I think it's obviously me. Maybe if I'm just not in her sight line, she'll be okay. So let me go find her. And she goes off to find her and finds her smoking in a part of the building where they're doing construction. And they have this back and forth. And the woman, the psychic woman, as you hear, she'll start to sort of sound possessed for a bit, which is, I don't know if she's supposed to be a medium. It's never really clearly explained, but it would make sense with what comes later. But I'll just play their dialogue where she somewhat explains kind of what you're talking about with the Compudeath idea.
We really shouldn't be up here during the remodeling. The elevator hasn't been working right. 2 people got stuck up here last month. Look, if this commercial tests well, you could be doing a whole series of these things. But you cross those guys downstairs and you've had it. I mean, you don't know what they're like. They'll put out the word on you.
The word's out. I drink, and I'm crazy. When I was 18, all this stuff started. Do you know Ed Palak?
No.
I was in this film he was producing. Mr. Palak's wife was going to have a baby. Only I knew about it even before he told everyone. I started having nightmares. Something was wrong with the baby. It was born, a girl, I think. It didn't live long. After that, I tried to warn people I dreamed about. But when you try to tell people about your nightmares, they think you're drunk or crazy. I drink, but I'm not crazy.
Excuse me for saying so, Carla, but half the people in this business think they're psychic.
Did Blake tell you I tried to stop you from taking that plane?
No, he didn't. But so what? I didn't die.
I never saw you die. I saw you not die.
What are you talking about?
No one can stop it, Denise. And anyone who gets in the way, or anyone who knows about it, or anyone who even suspects, will be dealt with.
God, Carla, you're not making any sense.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so she snaps out of it at the end because she starts saying this thing about, well, if you know about it, which of course she knows about it. So you're like, how did you live this long? But
man, you just reminded me of something I meant to tell you at the beginning of the show.
Sure.
I had a dream the other night, and in the dream you came to visit me, and you brought along a gaming doppelganger of me.
Ooh.
And it was very funny because in the dream you came to visit me and you had this doppelganger, but the doppelganger was like, it was like a digital but gamer only experience version of me. Yeah. So like the hair was kind of plasticky, like it almost looked like me but uncanny valley me, right? But you were just walking around, and the thing was anything that had to do with like video games, podcasting, being movies, like just being like buddies, the doppelganger was great. But then the second it had to do anything that involved like my kids or my wife, it completely fell apart, because at one point in the dream, you and I had to do something, and my wife was like, well, that's fine, we have a doppelganger, just tell him to go get the kids. And the doppelganger was like, I can't do that. What the fuck are kids? And there was just this really interesting, I don't understand why I had this dream. But in the dream, I just had this just imagery of you sitting there with this doppelganger version of me that was literally based off of my video game and podcast like mindset, but it didn't have any of my private life. It was missing all like my wife and my kids and all that stuff.
Sure.
So it was just a weird dream, and it's just shit kept popping up in the dream where it was like the doppelganger would hit like a wall where like this is beyond its reason. Very weird. Anyway, sorry. You were talking about, she was in the line. She was talking about dreams, and I suddenly was like, oh shit, yeah. I should tell Joe about that. This weird fucking dream we had. And then the dream, you actually said to me, well, at least it didn't come out a 6 foot muscular woman.
Muscular woman?
That's what she kept saying to me.
Sure.
I was like, well, I half expected it to be a 6 foot muscular woman, but no, it looks quite a lot like you. So anyway, go ahead.
Well, I don't have a digital doppelganger review hanging around, so I hate to disappoint you, but I don't have any way.
Oh well, maybe one day you will.
Someday, maybe someday. Yeah, when you get a Vision Pro and you make your avatar, or whatever they call it, your persona, I think they call it. Yeah.
When it scans your brain, man. It scans your
assuming
brain.
they're still making it since they've had to cut production on that because nobody wants it. But anyway, outside of that, in the film, after this discussion with Carla, where again we get a bit of the okay, so this is how it works. So then she mentioned the elevators weren't working.
Out of curiosity, who told her how it works?
Well, she has the X-Men thing. At 18, I started having vision, so puberty kicked in her superpower. So
got it. Okay.
She just, I guess, has. But again, her voice kind of, it's not really as obvious in the audio only, but when you see her face starts to get very kind of dead. So it's almost as if something is speaking through her.
It's channeling through her.
Yeah, because at the end where she says, oh, I'm sorry, like her face, she shakes her head for a second, her face changes. But not big special effect changes, just the way that some animation comes back into her features. Because she's talking, she's just kind of monotoning a bit with the way she's speaking in her face. Yeah. So it's subtle, but I noticed it. I'm like, okay, I think I see what's going on there. So Denise had mentioned, the elevators aren't working, which, was foreshadowing before she gets in the elevator. And she hits the 4th floor, but instead it takes her all the way down to the basement, which is a big empty parking garage. And so she's walking around, she starts to hear this noise, and she goes over to the escalators, and there's just a man standing at the top of them. Now, this guy looks a little different than everybody else we've seen. Number one, because he's got a lazy eye. I don't know whether the actor actually had a lazy eye or he could make his eyes kind of look different directions. And his face is slightly pale. Outside of that, he just has a fondness for denim, which is disturbing, but not inherently supernatural. So he's just standing there and staring at her. And so she immediately, reasonably, panics and says, I don't have any money. Just leave me alone. And he just keeps staring at her. At that point, she's like, okay, I'm running back to the elevator. And she's running, and he's just walking along. And she's hitting the button. The elevator doors aren't closing. He's just walking towards her. Now, he hasn't said anything, but at this point, you understand the terror. And like I said, there's no jump scariness. It's just a guy walking towards an unarmed woman in a parking garage with no one around, which is reasonably horrifying. So right as he gets to the elevator, the doors close, and he does put his hands up as if to catch them. So this is the first point in the movie where we've had anything where these whatevers have tried to do anything. So she gets back up to the 4th floor. She's fine. And then the next day she goes out to lunch with the doctor, and she's talking to him about it, and he's saying, maybe, what does he say? He says something about you subconsciously hit the basement thing. You overreact. Typical, man explaining to woman. And I do like the fact that the character is written as very forcefully like, no, stop. Don't tell me I don't know what I'm saying. I know what happened. I know I hit the 4th button. This person was coming towards me. Don't pretend that I'm somehow hysterical or because I'm a woman, I don't know what I'm remembering. And he kind of backs off immediately. So I do like the way the character is written. Some of the dialogue is organically clunky, which I think is good, where it sounds natural in its awkwardness, which is different than writing bad dialogue. This is not George Lucas awkwardness.
Because sometimes the way people talk cannot be like smooth.
Yeah, and some of the way, because they are a new couple, he's kind of making mistakes, and so is she. That kind of awkwardness, which is fine. And so as they're sitting there, she looks out the window, and across the street in the pouring rain, there's just a guy standing there staring at her. And I went, okay, is he going to see that guy? And so he looks out and sees the guy and goes, boy, some people just don't have the sense to come in out of the rain, and just kind of dismisses it. She doesn't necessarily think it's connected to what happened in the basement, but she notices the guy and she's kind of looking at him because he's just standing there staring. But then again, it's New York City and there are weird people walking out the street in the mid-'80s. So who the hell knows? So, but again, in terms of us, the audience, we know that guy is not just a guy standing there. There's something off. So then we cut back to her at her house, and she's by herself and she's taking this antidepressant medication. And she kind of gets spooked, and she goes over to her neighbor, And the neighbor is pretty young. She's a pretty young girl, and her parents are out of town or whatever. So she's playing strip poker with some other young people, which I think is just this movie's ability to get lost in the movie for 2 seconds.
Oh, you know what? And that was like the one photo I saw on the IMDb too. It's so funny.
Yeah,
that is so
and
funny.
that's the only scene of anything like that in the entire film. Which is just very stark in that, and it's a very well-known B-movie actress, Brink Stevens, who's one of these actresses who's like, I don't care, I'll get nude as long as you're paying me, what do I give a shit? So I'm sure that's, this is one of her early films, I think. And so it's the only thing this is in here for, but, it does provide a reason for the girl to kind of say, oh, wait a minute, when she opens the door and get dressed and everything. So the woman comes over and she's like, do you mind if I just hang out here? I'm just getting spooked out at my house. And she's like, yeah, sure, no problem. And so she's sitting there and she has a drink. And she kind of nods off. And so the young girl's like, okay, well, she's asleep, so I'm going to go party. So she calls her friends and says, all right, I'm going to come over there. And she writes a note to Denise and says, yeah, I'm heading out with friends. I'll be back in the morning, but feel free to, if you want to sleep here, it's no problem. Whatever. My parents are out of town. Who cares? But then as she's leaving her house, she looks over and notices that the door to Denise's house is open. So she goes over there just to close it. And she starts hearing a noise in the house. And she's looking around, at which point somebody grabs her and drowns her in the pool. Not Denise, but the neighbor. Drowns her and her body floats to the bottom.
Oh,
and
Jesus.
yeah, and so when Denise wakes up, she happens to wake up. She says, oh, where'd she go? And she sees the note, but then she notices that the car is in the driveway. And she sees that her door is open. So she immediately calls the police and says, hey, somebody's in my house. I don't know who it is. Get over there. And at that point, I was like, oh, that's smart. You don't go over there. You call the cops and you stay where you are. But then she goes over to the house. And she goes over to the house and she's looking around and she grabs a butcher knife, which I'm like, okay, well, you armed yourself, but why would you go into a house that you think somebody's in? And then she opens the blinds and suddenly a guy appears. And it's the same guy that she almost hit with her car the day before. And she panics and runs downstairs, opens the door, at which point the cops are there. And because she's holding a knife, they pull a gun on her. And they're like, hey. And she's like, no, I'm the one who called you. And then we cut to the next day. Next day, she's at the police station, and she's talking to the cops. And the doctor shows up and is basically there to pick her up and says, well, can I talk to the arresting officer and, find out what the hell's going on? And so this is their conversation where the police officer is explaining what they found based on her statements and what he thinks is going on.
Like I told you, we searched Ms. Watson's house. Didn't find a thing. Well, what about the girl? She's still missing. She left a note saying she'd be with friends. Overnight? Cutler girl apparently has a history of this sort of thing. Neighbors say she is in the habit of staying away from home, more so now that her folks are out of town. Okay. Forget about the girl for a second. Denise says you know who the man is who broke into the house. Yeah. She saw it and identified him as the guy. Is he? No. He's a state highway inspector. Been missing for a couple of days. Process of searching through the woods for Ms. Watson's intruder, we found him in his car. Had a heart attack while driving. Lost control of the car, went over an embankment, and piled into a tree. We found him deader than a doornail. Excuse me, we still on? Yeah. Give me 5. Okay. Been that way a couple of days, I guess. Look, I haven't known Denise all that long, but I don't think she would... You know her well enough to know about this? It's amitriptyline. It's an antidepressant. Yeah, I know what it is. Well, seems she's been rather casual about following the dosage. Last night, by her own admission, she was drinking on top of it. Now, you know as well as I do, Dr. Richardson, I could fuck over King Kong. And we got a lady here who claims to have been attacked by a dead man. The time of the attack, she was loaded. You see where we're coming from on this?
Understandably, they think that she was out of her mind on drugs because she was mixing a drug. Yeah,
I love that line. The amount was that she would down King Kong.
Would fuck over King Kong. Yes, I thought that was a delightful line too. Yes. So then we cut to her and the doctor in the apartment, and he's basically saying, they're saying that the guy you think you saw was dead and you were drinking on top of this drug. And I'm sure that, and she says, well, I told you that I was, still dealing with after effects of depression. He said, yeah, but you didn't tell me you were taking this. You have to be careful with this because of alcohol. I'm sure the doctor who gave you this said that you could die if you mix alcohol with this. And she says, yes, I know that. I was just spooked out from being in my house by myself. I wasn't thinking about it. I had one little drink. It wasn't a big deal. And I know what I saw. It wasn't the drugs. Again, she's very forcefully like, no, don't tell me I don't know what I was seeing. I know what I was seeing. And he says, okay. He said, let me go. I happen to know the coroner for the county. Let me go down there and see if the police maybe made a mistake. Maybe they misidentified this guy, something. And she's like, okay, fine. So he's like, I'll check it out. So I like the fact that he's like, all right, let me see if he still thinks there's a reasonable explanation, which makes sense because he hasn't seen any of this stuff. So he's thinking, okay, maybe this is a mistake where the cops have misidentified the intruder. They think that, based on her description, because she didn't take a picture of him, so maybe there's two people who look the same. So he goes down to have a discussion with the coroner. Now, you're going to hear a little bit of the chopped audio again because there was a sequence in here. It's not as bad as the other one, but I did shorten. I cut out a part in the middle that really is just nothing, where she gets a call. Denise gets a call from the actress saying, did somebody break into your house? I had a dream. Well, yeah. And she's like, oh, do you think you could maybe get me another shot at a job? And she's like, I can't help you. You freaked them out. That's it. And she's like, okay, well, just be careful or something like that, and hangs up, which of course, freaks her out. But this is the discussion with the coroner where the doctor is trying to figure out if maybe the cops have made an error. And they have, but not in the way the doctor thought.
Look at this. You got a kid that gets so bum-tripped over flunking algebra that he wolfs down 20 caps on Mommy's Percodan and checks out. Dumb shit. Somebody should have told him that 5 years from now, nobody would give a rat's ass whether or not he even went to high school.
Yeah. Artie, look, I really came by to find out about that guy they just brought in.
Oh, the dude from Streets and Public Works.
No, highways.
Well, same thing. All civil service bullshit. Hey, look, do yourself a favor and stay at Memorial. The worst mistake of my life was coming over here to county and getting mixed up with civil service.
Okay, about this guy.
Oh, the highway inspector. Can you imagine this guy has a massive coronary, drives off the highway and bites the big weenie. Cars going back and forth and nobody sees him.
Okay, now that's what I was wondering about. Can you let me see a workup on it?
What for?
Well, I think maybe the cops made a few mistakes.
You bet they did. I told them the report was wrong. But the cops, civil service. I get the feeling you know something about this. What?
Well, look, this guy may have been involved in breaking into a house, okay? Now, maybe the cops chased him, and he ran back to his car, and then had a heart attack.
Maybe. When was all this supposed to have happened?
Last night?
What? Not a chance. That guy was in the car for at least 48 hours. I was here when they brought him in. He was pretty ripe, if you know what I mean. Clothes all wet, covered with mud.
Wait a minute. If he was dead in his car for 2 days, why would he be wet? It only started to rain last night. I mean, if he was in there all the time.
Who knows? Maybe the cops dropped him or something and didn't report it. They botched the report anyway.
How?
They said they found the guy lying face down in the front seat of the car.
So?
So if the guy died lying face down, all the blood in his body would have settled along here.
Didn't it?
No. Every drop of blood in that guy's bod drained into his legs. No way did he lie around for any 2 days on his face. He died standing up.
Artie, don't be stupid. How could the guy die standing up? He was in a car.
That's what the cops said. All I know is the blood was in his legs. How it got there is not my department. Look, we had the same fight over some old geezer they found in the park. The report says kidney failure, found lying in a prone position. Kidney failure, yes, prone position, no. All the blood was in his legs. I point that fact out to this asshole captain in Metro. How'd the blood get in his legs, he says. Not my department, I says. For all I know, he was up and walking around after he died.
Artie, thanks.
This captain's got no sense of humor.
The doctor starts to panic and leaves because now things are starting to add up because she had told him about the guy in the park. And, this guy's telling him things that don't make any sense because he's a doctor, so he understands what he's saying. And so it's dawning on him that, wait a minute, maybe she's not nuts, because too many things are starting to line up with what she's been very, very clear about that she knew was happening the whole time. So he goes to call her because she was staying at his house, and her service says, oh, she said she was going home to pick up some clothes. And so he panics and jumps in the car to go find her. Now, she was taking a cab to go get her clothes. The cabbie, who's a fucking sexist asshole, who's like asking her all these really gross, sexist questions, drops her off. And as he's driving back, he happens to see the girl who drowned walking with a butcher knife. She kills him, of course. And then the doctor is driving along the same road, sees the cab, finds the guy dead, and then is now really panicking because some things are not good. Like, things are starting to go really, really badly. So he gets to the house right as the dead girl, the one who got drowned in the pool, is about to stab Denise. And he gets there, and instead of stabbing Denise, she stabs him. And so he's dead, and she runs. She grabs the gun that he had. So the doctor had a gun. He grabbed it from the cab. So she grabs the gun, gets out to the car, takes off, and drives until the car runs out of gas. At which point, she gets on a bus. And now we're cutting to the scene from the very beginning where she's got the blood on her shirt, she's holding the gun, and she's on the bus. And I'm sitting here going, okay, where is this going? I mean, at this point, I don't know how this thing is going to end. So she goes to see the actress who was psychic. Thing is, we saw the actress who was psychic commit suicide like 2 scenes before. So we see her, the actress is just sitting there.
Oh, okay.
Right? And she's saying to her, she's like, we have to tell somebody. There's too many bodies now. Somebody has to know this is going on. And we have to tell somebody. At which point the actress, because she had put the gun down on the coffee table because she didn't realize that the actress had killed herself.
Yeah.
And the actress picks up the gun and points at her, and then you see the slices down her arm, which I'll give them credit. They did it the correct way. You're not supposed to do the T, you do the long line. Well, she did the long line, so at least they got that right, because most of the time they do it wrong in these older movies where it's the cross thing. So nope, they've got the line going all the way down, so she did it the right way. It wasn't one of these fake out or call for help suicides. So she points the gun at her, and when she does, Denise closes her eyes and smiles, and then the actress shoots her and kills her. At which point the actress goes back and puts herself back into the tub where she killed herself. And then we cut to the coroner with all the bodies laid out. And the coroner has the dead girl who drowned with the butcher knife, Denise, the actress, and the doctor, all there laying down. And he basically calls the police, the lieutenant, the guy who he'd argued with before, to tell him that, again, they're getting all these reports wrong. So this is the very end of the film.
Well, if you want to be around long enough to get your pension, get Patterson on the line. Right now.
Patterson? Okay, so you knew the guy, so what?
Well, it makes sense with what he was asking me about yesterday. This Davis woman, what little blood was left in her drained into her legs. Same thing with the cab driver. And the Cutler girl, same deal. No, she may not be unrelated. Yeah, I know she drowned, but how did the blood get in her legs? Ugh, how do I know? Yeah, I got the DR forms. Thanks. There's something going on here. Maybe this time we'll see if we just can't get to the bottom of it. I'm going to walk this sucker all the way to the top. Might be a promotion in it once I get it figured out.
He's saying this, by the way, to the room full of corpses. So, of course, right after he says this, one of them sits up, which is the girl with the knife. I mean, she doesn't have the knife, but she sits up and starts walking towards him. And the last thing of the movie is him turning around and seeing her, and then it cuts to black. So the fact that he said something's going on and I'm going to reveal it is now, they've killed him, and that's going to be the end of it because nobody's listening to him. And that's
Compudeath strikes again.
Compudeath. Right. So I really liked the movie. It has this, again, it's a slow burn, and there's always this thing where the woman, Denise, she never seems to, I mean, she's reacting reasonably by running from people trying to kill her, but she never says, why me? She always seems to know, because she was talking about the thing where all the you're always going to get billed eventually, and I feel odd, like I got away with buying that dress, except I didn't get away with it. So there is this sense as the movie's going on that she's sort of knows that inevitably she's going to die. And that's why when the woman goes to shoot her, she doesn't even try to, she just smiles and closes her eyes because she knows she's dead. And there's an interesting sense of that through the movie where none of it feels vindictive. It feels like just, again, that there was a disruption and natural forces are realigning things the way they should have been. You know, like that thing where you can't really break time. You can only bend it and it will snap back into place eventually. That's kind of a big science fiction trope.
Yeah.
So it makes the movie feel different. I really liked it because it doesn't just have the kind of typical, again, Final Destination thing where it's, you know, playing up the horror and the gore of it. But this feels, I don't know, there's something slightly different about it. And I think it makes it better than...
Well, it's more, it's not ambivalent. That's not the word I'm looking for. It's more benign.
It's more resigned to what is. You know, it's not treating this as...
But even death itself, death is using whatever features it has to try and set things straight. But it's not doing it to be evil. It's doing it because something has fallen out of alignment.
Right. Yeah, it's just, it has a slightly different feel than a typical...
Honestly,
especially mid-'80s horror movie.
You could rewrite this from the point of view of death, trying to use underlings to do this and turn it into a horror comedy.
Yeah, you could. I suppose you could do that. Sure.
You see what I mean? Writing it from the point of view of Compudeath.
Yeah, no, I could see that. Sure. And you know, I looked around a little bit after because I'd seen on IMDb it had some very kind of hit or miss reviews. But when I looked at more of the kind of like websites that reviewed it, it does have a better... In critical estimation, it does better. And that's probably because, again, compared to modern horror movies, it moves very slowly. You know, and there's a lot of parts of just her and the doctor talking and that type of thing. It's a talky movie. And there's really only any notable gore at the very beginning, which there is one really, really heavy gore moment where when the woman's dreaming of her surviving the car wreck, she looks at a guy who's been cut in half and all of his entrails are kind of flooded out. But outside of that, until the doctor gets stabbed, there's really no other even blood in the movie. It's just a lot of like body, you know, dead people staring and, you know, scary kind of empty spaces and the clock looking at her. But there's no real gore or anything else until the doctor gets stabbed. And then you see, you know, he's bleeding, but it's really just blood. So again, I could see why in a modern context people would think it was boring, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was worth seeing. And like I said, when I read about it, some people compared it to John Carpenter, and I can see that. I didn't think about that watching it, but now, or having read that, I thought, okay, yes. In terms of the fact that it is this kind of very specific pacing, and I don't know really how else to phrase it, but there is this very kind of deliberateness to it that does remind me of something like Halloween, where there's kind of these long spaces where nothing's really happening. It's just scene setting. And, you know, the famous thing where she sees him behind the bush and then kind of looks back and he's gone. It's a lot of that kind of stuff. So there is that slow burn to it. And I think that's where I can see the comparison. Otherwise, no, it doesn't have, although I guess in the ending, it does kind of have the Carpenter kind of, yep, you know, this is what it is, kind of the Prince of Darkness ending where it's like, yep, no, you're going to lose. Do what you want, but you're going to lose. So I suppose that, too, I didn't really put that together till just now. But, yes, that makes sense, too. So, yeah, I liked it. It's, you know, it's a cut above movies of this era, especially one doing this type of thing. And you can see a direct inspiration point to something like Final Destination. I can see exactly where people see this and think of that. Now, I don't know if the people who made the Final Destination films actually did see this and thought, okay, what if we do a much more almost comically gory version of this? Because that's what the Final Destination films are. They go over the top in the death scenes. Like
I can't take those movies seriously anymore.
Well, no, I don't think they're meant to be outside the first one.
I know, but what I mean is, ever since I saw, the scene with the logs.
Yes, that's a great scene.
Ever since I saw them put Leonidas's face on that log.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I cannot take that scene seriously anymore because every time I see it, all I can think is, "This is Sparta." As he comes through the window.
That was one of the most well-known of the ones.
Yeah. Man, I can't get over that. So yeah, it has ruined it a bit for me.
No, and that's understandable because it is. Should I link it? No, I'll let people find on their own. But yes, that may ruin, those films for them. But like I said, I can see where people draw a line from this movie to that, and whether it was actually part of it or not, it
makes
is
sense.
within that same realm of, okay, you can't escape. But that's the one bit of it that to me is, I don't know how to kind of compute it, which is, you heard her say in that one clip, did he tell you I said don't take the flight? And she says, no, he never told me. So Denise didn't, I mean, I guess that's what I mean about it's almost a natural order thing, because in a lot of these movies, the trick is that they found out something, or they had some reason why they knew they were going to die and they did something differently, and that's cheating death. This woman just survived a wreck. Why was she?
It was just a glitch.
Well, the thing is that's the one piece that is missing to me is, so does that mean that every person who just gets lucky and doesn't die in a mass casualty event is going to be claimed? Although, you know what? Oh, I forgot. There was one thing. Shit. I guess I forgot. There was one little piece of dialogue. I should have captured it. I think the movie is saying that now that I think back on it, because the doctor says, when he's talking to her about survivor syndrome, he says, do you know that most people who have survivor syndrome, a majority of them end up dying either by suicide or by subconsciously putting themselves in harm's way because they feel like they should be dead. And I guess that line would imply that, yes, everybody who does survive something like this does die.
I think the argument also is the fact that they're not saying that everyone who gets lucky and survives should be dead. They're saying that in her situation, she feels like she was supposed to die and she got lucky, but she knows that she was supposed to. I mean, that's the other part of this, is that she knows. You said yourself that she can feel it, like there's something wrong, like she owes something. So I think there's a differentiation between people who are just lucky and then people who are actually a glitch in the system's plans.
And I guess that's the one part that when you said, well, is this a downer film? Well, in that sense it is, because there's no
hope for her.
Well, not even just the hope part. There is that, but there's no thing that makes it seem like she deserves any of this. So it's just one of these things where, as far as we can tell, a good person, or at least not an evil person, through no fault of their own, got lucky, but doesn't get to be lucky because reason. And we don't know what that reason is. There is no reason given. And that part is a downer. Yeah.
No, just reason. That's nature. But that's nature.
Well, that's what I meant about it's a force of nature film. So there is that sense to it. But that is one of the elements that I actually kind of like, is that I was sitting here going, okay, I'm trying to figure this thing out because it's not clearly spelled out. And this idea that there are just these bodies that get up and randomly, is this happening everywhere? And just our coroners just drop. Like, it's almost a universe where this movie is revisited as a modern sequel where somebody finds out that all these coroners had died when they just happened to be making notes about people's blood flowing into the wrong place. It's like a Kolchak the Night Stalker type of thing. We're sitting there going,
it could be very Kolchak. Yeah.
It could be. It's almost like an X-Files episode type of thing where somebody could follow up on this movie and have somebody, I mean, the only problem with that is then you have to explain the whole death thing. Or
but honestly, but you don't. You could also make it so that it's like a localized effect.
Sure.
Maybe
or you could have it where the guy looking into it, in fact, is being used by death to kill one person and just didn't realize that he died too. I don't know. You can do a lot of things with it.
Oh yeah, like a Sixth Sense type thing.
Yeah. Yeah, like a guy who says, I used to get blackout drunk a lot, and after I woke up on my last one, I said, I'm changing my life and I'm going to try to find this thing out. You find out, well, that last one was the last one. You died. That wasn't a blackout. You died of alcohol poisoning, and you got resurrected to go find this person so that you could get them put into harm's way or whatever. There's ways to do it. And that's what I mean about it left me interested. It's a very simple story. I mean, there's not really much to it, but it had enough in terms of its atmosphere that was good, that overcame any of the problems I had with it. I mean, it's a very dated-looking film. You're not going to get around the fact that it was made in 1984.
Well, that happens. I mean...
Yeah. So the thing is, modern conveniences would have to be dealt with in some way. Cell phones and all the rest of this. And would there be an internet weblog about the Compudeath that's following everybody? Would there be an Alex Jones type who's like, I'm telling you, death is out there, and he's going after people, like that kind of shit? you'd have to architect around that. But as it is, I would actually recommend this to most people if you like a little bit of a less jumpy, jump scare, modern horror type of film, because I honestly don't like most modern horror films. A lot of them bore me. And this one interested me because I like the main character. Like I said, she was written differently than I would expect for a woman of this time period. She talks about, I don't think they needed to give a reason, or maybe they did, where she talks about that she took assertiveness classes, and so that's why she's, not going to let somebody talk over her or convince her or something. I don't know that you needed that, but then again, maybe in
it's the
1984,
80s.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe this broad's being awfully mouthy for a chick. That doctor should smack the sass out of her mouth, type of thing. I don't know. But so they give her that assertiveness class thing. But I don't really care because, as I said, every time somebody tries to tell her that she's imagining something or whatever, no shit, man. No, she just cuts that right out and says, no, I know what I saw. This is what I saw. It's not something else. I'm telling you what happened.
Hey, fuck you, buddy. I know what I saw.
Pretty much. And I like that because it does make the character stand out from a lot of characters in these movies who, up to a certain time period, were damsels in distress, right? They were there to be either killed for having sex or doing drugs, or to be hysterical and disbelieved.
Or to have boobs.
Or to have boobs, which there is a little of that in this, but, at least it does function somewhat within the movie, sort of. I mean, it stands out, don't get me wrong. It's the only part of this movie that feels like a 80s slasher or whatever. The rest of it feels like it is a different type of film. And I do like a lot of the writing. It's not always acted particularly well. The coroner, as you could hear in those clips, isn't the best actor I've ever heard, but I do like the dialogue. I like the way people talk to each other. It feels, you heard the thing with the cop talking to the doctor, and some. Of the stuff
listen, there's well thought out ideas mixed in there.
Yeah, and the writing is organically, as I said, awkward, and that does work as well. So overall, I would say, for people who are into horror films, especially if you like kind of atmospheric stuff where it's not all people tearing their own faces off or demons jumping out of somebody's asshole, that type of thing, then, which I'm all for.
I think I've seen that porno.
That would be Dreamcatcher by Stephen King, except it's aliens coming out of people's assholes, not demons. Same thing though. You've read that book, right? Where the team.
Yes, I have, and I've seen the scene as well.
Yes. Well, what a beautiful scene it is. Something that I never would have predicted as a young man I would see on the big screen or whatever screen. But in any event, I would recommend this to people. I think it's worth seeing. I don't know that I would say buy it sight unseen, but it's on YouTube in a lot of places. I believe it's on AMC, and I don't know if it was, I don't think it was rentable on Prime. I think you had to buy it, but I watched it on YouTube. It was perfectly fine quality. I don't know if there's really an HD release of this. I don't think I saw a Blu-ray. So what I saw on YouTube is probably a DVD rip, and that's fine. It's perfectly serviceable. So I would say it's worth seeing if you're into horror, especially if you haven't seen it, or if you like the Final Destination things and want to see kind of an early version of that without all the over the top and Leonidas on the end of a log jam.
Oh man, I love that. I can't tell you how many times I must have watched that 1,000 times.
Oh,
it's that face.
Very funny. Oh, it's very funny.
You know what? I'm gonna go find it right now. Hold on. Let's see if it comes up.
Final Destination.
Leonidas log.
Search. Yeah, let's see here.
No, you might find it first then.
I am Sparta, if I can spell Sparta right. Final Destination. Here it is.
I think I found it.
Did you find it?
I think I found it. Hold on.
Oh, memearsenal.com. Okay.
I found the scene, but not the one with Leonidas' face.
Yeah, where is the... you know what? You know why we're doing this wrong? We have to look on... There it is, Giphy. I was going to say it's going to be... Yep, there it is.
Is it Giphy?
I'll just send it to you.
Please send it to me.
I tell you what, man. You're right. It doesn't lose a goddamn thing. I probably haven't watched this in 10 years.
Oh, here we go. Come here.
Oh God.
Just you know what it is? It's the look on his face. It's the look on his face. He's got this his eyebrows are all drawn.
He's got and
then he comes out the back going Sparta.
Oh boy. Oh man. which is a shame because that's a great scene in terms of that log cover.
You know what? It's an even better scene now.
Oh man.
I have to shut this.
I can't watch that.
Oh man.
Be able to talk. That's very funny.
Jeez. Oh god, it's in the Skype. I have to move that. Okay.
Did it actually? Oh, look at that.
It loaded.
There it is.
It loaded in the Skype.
I didn't know it was going on there. I was looking at the
can't
actual
make
page.
sense
Oh,
and
God.
have that there. Oh, jeez.
Oh, that's the life.
Well, that's a good way to end it. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely find it. It's totally
go
worth it.
find that. Yeah, I searched for I Am Sparta Final Destination on tenor.com, which is, I'm sure Giphy has it too, but that's where I found it. So.
Oh, man.
But in all seriousness, I thought Soul Survivor was actually quite good. So.
Well, so is 1984. I would recommend 1984 as well.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that.
Oh, and I recommend that GIF. Oh, man. That actually got tears to my eyes really quickly.
I also had to close it because. Yeah. And that's it. That's all. That's all I've.
That's all we got.
Oh! One last thing. On Monday, from the posting of this show, so the Monday after this will be the double feature where Doug Bielmeyer and I talk about Near Dark and From Dusk Till Dawn.
We thought that was out already.
No, I wanted to save that for May because, okay, so here's the explanation of that, just as an ender, is I am not going to do all the elaborate video editing on these things anymore because
it takes too much time.
Well, it takes too much time and it's getting blocked. And it's getting blocked because now we're talking about more popular movies. I think we got away with it.
Yeah.
And especially because some of the movies we're talking about doing next, there is no way they're not going to get blocked. The only block we got on the version that's going to be released is... Yeah.
Can you, out of curiosity, can you use a still and then just put audio dialogue to it?
Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, because sometimes it gets blocked on the soundtrack.
Oh,
which is what on this one it got blocked. I don't care because it's only in Russia, and you know what? I don't care. Fine, then Russians can't watch the video. I'm listening to the audio. I'm sorry, Russian people, but the fact that ZZ Top shows up for one clip of From Dusk Till Dawn gets the video blocked in Russia. What do you want from me? And I was like, you know what? That's it. Because I also realized. Because somebody had messaged me and said, I don't know how you watch a lot, but and I realized that I agree with this. There are certain things where I get annoyed if there's a lot of video, if I'm used to listening to it as kind of a background thing. So it's a specifically YouTube thing. And I noticed myself that I have this too. I just never really keyed in on that.
Listen, the company that does my college courses, they have video college courses. I never get them because I want the audio. So I get it. I get that.
Well, I think specifically too, because we've been audio only for so long, and to be honest, with the John Carpenter ones, especially the first one with Assault and Escape from New York. Those two are so visually and narratively combined. I thought it was really important to show scenes that mirrored each other to show how those movies developed, that one led to the other. But with something like Near Dark and Dusk Till Dawn, they don't really have a connection that way. I don't need to show as much of those movies because, we don't talk about specific scenes that need to be shown the way we did about the Carpenter ones more, especially those first two. So I'm just going to go. I mean, there is a moving image. I didn't leave it as just a static image. There's a cassette that's playing, and I do change the visuals a little bit so that it's not just a static black screen or just the logo. So, you can glance at it. What I really did was I found a sticker of Bill Paxton to put on the Near Dark part, and I found a sticker of Salma Hayek as Santana Pandemonium and put her on the tape for the second one. And I put some blood spatter on the cassette as it goes around. And I changed the sticker on the cassette to tell you what movie we're listening to. And I did play the trailers because they don't care about the trailers. So the trailers play so that, if you really don't know anything about it, you could see the trailer, which I forget I always think those movies are more recent than they are. But man, the trailers are really shitty for them.
Oh, yeah, but that's because the type of trailers they do today are nothing like even in the 90s. Different. They're very different. Yeah, really different.
Especially even the one from Near Dark to From Dusk Till Dawn. Boy, that's where you start to see the shift in trailers quite a bit. But I will say the one thing that you will want to watch the YouTube for is the little intermission video I found, which is psychotic. It's apparently Bic lighters did an intermission video with two lighters they're talking about eating condiments and they're saying all this weird shit and then they're making weird noises, and that you should see. Even if you just listen to it, it's great. But that's the only thing I will recommend, and that they don't care about either. So, yeah, go watch that. And the rest of it you can listen to. But when you get to the part where you hear the Bic lighters talking, watch the video, because it's fucking bonkers. I was looking through old drive-in intermission ads, which, man, if you want to go down a rabbit hole of bizarre marketing, that's your fucking money pit, man, mother lode, because they made some weird shit for drive-ins, man. Like, just weird stuff. They were doing experimental Lynchian fucking art film for intermissions for a while in the 60s and 70s, and it's beautiful. So I just picked one. I think that's what I'm going to do from now on is I'm going to just go find drive-in ads that are really weird and offbeat and put those in between the things, because that shit's a gold mine. So that's the only thing I would say. When you hear the Bic lighter going, hey, I want to flick my Bic, go watch it. Watch that. I don't even know what to describe how it starts off as. It's one lighter rescuing another in some kind of psychedelic yellow submarine animation thing. I have no idea. I don't know where somebody came up with this. They had to be high. I just don't get it otherwise. Other than that, you can listen to it in the background. So that will be out on Monday. But that's what I'm not going to, unless there's a special case where I really want to highlight something, I may do one or two specific things, but I'm not going to do all the work that I did on those first two, because I don't know that most people are getting anything out of it, to be honest, and it's not worth the video getting delayed by a month when nobody's going to care anymore because the audio version will have been out. So I just want to get these things to be able to come out, and I'm just trying to get them out in as many places as possible, but I'm not going to go crazy on it because I'm not that good at video editing, everybody. I'm just not. And rather than spend 10 hours on something you're not going to see for a month or ever possibly, I'll just do the thing that I know will almost certainly, like I said, Russia seems to be on the crazy horse of blocking everything. Well, then fuck Russia. I'm sorry. What do you want from me? Everybody else gets to see it. But ZZ Top apparently is blocking us from Russia. Well, I'm sorry ZZ Top is in the background of George Clooney yelling at Harvey Keitel in the titty twister. I can't do anything about that. So, on that note, just wanted to point that out if anybody notices that, yeah, there's not as much video editing going on. Yeah, there isn't, because I suck at it. And it's a lot of work and it gets blocked because YouTube fucking blows. So, on that lovely parting... Well, no, actually, I should say it. So, 1984, Lando recommends. Soul Survivor, 1984. Oh, hey, that wasn't planned, but it is. So, 2 picks for 1984. One, the full cast audio of the book. The other, a movie from that time called Soul Survivor. Either way, go forth and enjoy your weekend, and we will talk to you again next week. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @OzoneNightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. The opening theme for the show is provided by Heartbeat Hero. The closing theme is provided by Ogre. Please visit and support these artists using the links in the show notes for each episode.